Welcome to video 11 in my Intro to HTML web video series. In this video I'm going to talk about the box model. So what's the box model? The box model is the idea that every single HTML element, be it a header, an article, a nav, or a footer, all are built around the idea of a box. That box can have a background, such as all of these have a background color. They can have a height and a width. They can have a boundary. You can see clearly where they begin and end, where the top edge is and the bottom edge is. They have space around them called margins and padding, and all boxes hold content. As you may recall, the content is all of the words, pictures, sounds, gadgets, anything we go to a web page to view. All that content goes inside of these boxes. We can use these boxes to set up the structure of our web page. So let's take a look at some of the HTML that built this simple web page. Not a very nice looking web page yet. It's got a header with an H1. It's got a nav that contains a UL, a series of LIs, each LI containing a link. Right now I haven't defined the reference to the links. It's got an article, or two articles, I should say. Each article has an H2 and a series of paragraphs, and it has a footer with some small text in it. So it's a standard web page that we've been building since the beginning, that we've been building up on. Now let's talk about this box model. We've been using one property of the box model since we started using CSS, and that's background color. We can affect the background of any box. We can either add a color or an image, and we'll get to images a little bit later. Now I want to talk about the other properties of the box model. I'm going to affect paragraph here. First thing I'm going to do is add in a background color just so you can see them. This is going to be really gaudy. It's going to make the website look terrible. This is not good form. I'm just changing the background color of the paragraphs so that you can see the box model in action. I'm going to make it red. Now you can kind of see why this is bad design. You've got a series of red blocks, each one breaking up the flow of the document. So we wouldn't normally do this, but I just want to have the background color in there to demonstrate what the box looks like. So you can see clearly that each of these paragraphs has a box that contains the content. Now let's look at some of the properties. The first property I want to show you is margin. Looks like this, margin. And then you add in some sort of a value. The value can be an absolute value or a relative value. An absolute value would be something like this, 15px. The px stands for pixels. I'm going to save it, go to the browser, and refresh it. Watch for the change. Did you see the change? What you should have seen is that it created a little space in between the edge here, the left edge, the right edge, and the top edge of these paragraphs. The paragraph already has a built-in margin on the bottom and top, so you probably didn't see the top and bottom change, but you certainly saw the left and right side change. It added space in between the border of our element and the next element, or the edge of the page. That's margin. It pushes outward from the border. I'm going to make that margin a little bit bigger so you can see it a little more clearly. I'm going to go all the way up to 55 pixels and refresh it. Now you'll see it push away from top and bottom and from the sides. Now you've got a clear picture of what the margin is. Let's look at the next property in the box model. The other type of space is called padding. I'm going to give it 5% padding. So we used an absolute unit before in pixels. Now we're using a relative unit in a percentage. The percentage is based on the size of the containing element. In this case, it's based on the size of the paragraph. So I'll put the padding in, 5%. 5% of the padding gets added in between the content and the edge of the box. Before we put the padding in, you saw this text content touching the edge of this paragraph box. That's not good. We never want to have content touching the edge of the box. The way you space things out to prevent that is using padding. So margin pushes away on the outside of a box. Padding pushes away from content on the inside of the box. Now let's take a look at border. Border looks like this. Border has to have a few qualities to it. The way I remember these qualities is this: 2 pixels, solid, and then a color. I'm going to put in green so that it's going to be really visible. You need to have a width, you need to have a style, and you need to have a color. If you're missing any of these, your border won't work properly. So save it, refresh it, and you can see my border showed up. It's barely visible since it's only 2 pixels. I'll make it wider. We'll make it 5 pixels. I'm going to change the style to dotted. I'm going to change the color to silver. Oh, I shouldn't change it to silver. I should change it to having some problems here. Notepad++ is not responding. There we go. I'm going to change, instead of silver, I'm going to make it blue so you'll actually be able to see it. Save it. Go over and refresh it. You can see the 5 pixels dotted blue. So that's border. The last 2 properties we want to talk about is height and width. Height and width. And this just controls the height and width of the box. Normally you're not going to control the height. Normally you'll just let the content control the flow of the document and its height. The more content you put in there, the higher the box will become. Width is one we'll control quite a bit. But height is going to look like this: 500 pixels. You need an absolute value in there. And then width, I'm going to go with a relative value of 50%. 50%. And that'll make it the width of the paragraph will be 15% or 50% the width of the containing element. In this case, paragraph is contained inside of an article, so it'll be half the width of the article. All the paragraphs will be half the width of the article. You watch. There we go. When you include the padding in there, it's half the width of the article, and they're 500 pixels high. So that's the basics of the box model. To review, the box model has background, which you can use a color, you can use an image. It has a margin, which is a space in between the outer edge of the border and the next element. The padding, which is a space in between the content and the edge of the box. The border, which is the line that goes around the box. The height and the width, which controls the height and width dimensions of our box. In the next video, I'm going to go into more depth on the different values for units and for border, and we'll talk about different options.